Hello, everyone. This is Todd McPartlin with iMarketing Leader, and today's training is on your email list and building your list. The title of this training is "The Money is in Your List." Again, I'm Todd McPartlin, co-founder of iMarketing Leader and author of Automation Domination, a business owner's guide to dominating your market online. So our R4 system, marketing system, starts out at reputation at the low level and reach, resell, and referral. And this topic on your email list and marketing to that list is really in the reach and the resell portion of it. So kind of keep that in mind. We do like to go with a holistic approach to marketing, um, but that is one second here. All right, so we like to go with the holistic approach. So this one is going to be focusing on reach and resell. So let's take a look at first. This is from chapter 7 of my book. I mentioned the title of that book. It's right there. It's available just about anywhere online that you can find to order books. And the title of that chapter is called "The Money is in Your List." So I want to start at the low level. First, why should you build a list? And I believe, and a lot of marketers believe, that building a list can be your single biggest asset of your business. So as business owners, we like to build assets so then someday we might be able to sell our business. Um, and websites are assets, traffic is assets, but your list can also be an asset. So the example I give in the book, and I'll talk about here briefly, is an estate attorney. So an estate attorney will work with people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, planning for their death, which might be 30 or 40 years out. And the reason they do that is because they know if they build your last will and testament or your living trust, that they are building a business that could be sold later on. Right? They might be older than you are, and they might not be around when you pass on. But when they get ready to retire, they can sell that whole, back in the day, a cabinet full of wills, and they can sell that to another attorney who will pay top dollar for that because they know that there's a lot of money in those files. So I want you to kind of think of your business in that same approach. If you build a huge list of potential buyers or buyers, your business will become immediately more profitable because someone can come into your business, immediately start marketing to those clients or customers or patients, and start generating money, cash flow right away. So, as you probably already know, a lot of businesses are judged on cash flow. That is one way that you can show that you have a very high potential for cash flow. It is one of the most powerful forms of marketing because you actually can direct that traffic. Last training, we talked about traffic that you own, traffic that you control, and traffic you don't control. And if you own traffic, meaning you can direct them where you want to go. So if you send out an email with a link in it, when people click on that link, you can send them wherever you want them to go, to your offer, to another offer, to an affiliate offer, to just some education. But it's a very powerful form of marketing when you can control that. And the last point here is the fortune is really in the follow-up. You've probably heard that many times. Most of us do not do it, but the average is somewhere between 7 and 12 times that you need to follow up with a potential buyer before they'll actually buy. So there was sticky sites for sweet profits that I talked about, building your irresistible offer. That's all leading to this chapter where you're actually, what are you going to do with that list, why you should build it. But it's really to follow up. The first time someone comes to your website, they might not buy from you, especially if your price point is higher. The higher your price point, the more times you're going to have to follow up with them, because it's a hard decision for someone to make. So if you think about it, 7 to 12 times if someone visits your site, how are you going to follow up with that person if you never capture any information about them? They're really lost if you don't follow up with them. So this is the traffic that you own from the training that we did last time. And a couple important things here. A list that's not growing is dying. You need to be constantly adding people to your list, constantly communicating with people on your list, and building that relationship with people on your list. I know a lot of businesses that may have, maybe it's an e-commerce business or a local store, and oh yeah, we have all these emails. And I ask them, when's the last time you talked to them on, communicate through email? Well, we never have. Okay, that's essentially a cold list, right? A cold list is hard to get someone to re-engage with you. Maybe they bought from you a year ago, and all of a sudden you're emailing them with an offer or with some education. You got to start that relationship all over again. So the important part is you need to build that list, and you need to interact with it right away. But you need to constantly be building that list. Don't just say, oh, I have 100 people on my list, and stop trying to add people to it. And speaking of lists, we're not just talking about email lists, right? An email address obviously is the cheapest and easiest form of marketing. It doesn't cost much money at all to write up an email and have an email service provider to be able to send an email out to potential clients or to your clients. But we'd also like to collect things like their physical address. And we'll go over some ways that you can actually use these for marketing. Cell phone numbers. Text messaging is becoming a very popular form of marketing, has a very high open rate, not a very high conversion rate yet. Mostly, I believe, because a lot of websites where people are sending them are not mobile responsive. If you're going to send out a text message and you're going to send them to a landing page, that landing page needs to be mobile responsive and with a very distinct call to action, which all of your marketing should actually have that. You must track your marketing. Now, I talked about that before in one of the 7 advertising mistakes. It was actually number 8, not tracking. It was a bonus one that I threw on there. Not tracking or no tracking is actually a waste of time and money. If you start a marketing campaign, you listen to this training and say, okay, great, I'm going to go out and start sending emails or postcards or making phone calls, and you're not actually tracking that marketing, it's a complete waste of your money and time, because you don't know what's working, what's not working. You don't know where you could refine your message. You don't know what message is getting people to take action, so you can spend more money on that. That's the second bullet point here, A/B split testing. You need to be able to test everything. And we'll go into some specifics on the different types of campaigns here, which is I have underneath there the track. Track your emails, your postcards, your phone calls, your text messages. You need to be able to track every single one of your pieces of marketing. And this is just online marketing, right? Postcards are offline marketing, but if you have TV or radio or billboards or display ads, every one of those items could be tracked in a particular way. They might not all be able to be tracked in the same manner. You might not be able to get as much information, but even, for example, a TV commercial, if you had a specific code that somebody used to log into a website, you can track that TV commercial played on, Fox or NBC. You have a different code for that, and you see that with the big marketers, right? The big marketers will always have a specific code, and that's because they're trying to track that marketing. So let's get into a little bit of how you would track the different types of marketing. We're going to cover 4 of them here. So email marketing. Obviously, the cheapest way, probably one of the first ways, if you're not currently marketing today, that you're going to get into because of the expense. It's very, very easy to get into. Some of the things you want to test and track for email are your delivery rate. Every email provider, and I'll go over some of them at the end of the presentation here, but every email provider has a different delivery rate. Some allow more spammy uh, people, and if you get a lot of spam complaints, the internet service providers start blocking those, and other email providers start knowing that emails coming from a particular IP address, and that's what they would send them these emails out through, could potentially be spam. So you want to really look for a high quality email service provider. Look at their spam compliance, because everything we're going to do is above board. We want to make sure that they have a very strict and zero tolerance rule for spam, and that will most likely keep that delivery rate up. You'll see a lot of this on the email tracking. If you use a professional email tracking tool, you're going to see all of these items in that tool. Delivery rate, you'll see that from bounce rates, you'll see that from spam complaints, you'll see that in undeliverables. The next one is the open rate. You want to test the open rate. The open rate is 100%, well, maybe 95% on your subject line, and the other 5% might be who it's from. They have to recognize who it's from, and assuming they know your name or your business name, the next reason, the only reason that they would have to open your email is from the subject line. So if they know who you're from, but the subject line is poor or weak, and it's not something that they're really interested in right now, we get hundreds of emails a day, if not thousands. They're just going to put it on the back burner and come back to it later on. So that is subject lines. Those should be A, B, C, D split tested, right? You got to, depending on how big your list is, you want to test 2, 3, 4 different types of subject lines, all for the same offer. Next one is the click-through rate, or CTR. That is in your email when you want to get them to do something. Maybe you want to get them to click on a link and go to your website. That is 100% due to your copy and your offer. If your subject is great and they open your email, but your text, the body or the copy that's in that email is weak, they might not click through. If the offer is weak, $2 off, $5 off, and they know it's a pretty high ticket item, that's not going to get them to take action. Maybe your action is not a click through rate and it's actually a phone call. Well, on the phone call, maybe you would say use this offer code or mention this ad or mention this promotion. And then the person on the other end of the phone call should be tracking that. You should have a very specific spreadsheet or database to track phone calls. Because a lot of time, that's what people are going to do. Even if you have an e-commerce site, if they don't feel comfortable filling out your e-commerce site, they might give you a call. But you want to know, where did that information come from? So those are a couple of main things. Now, email marketing is one of the highest ways that you can track, has the most different ways that you can actually track information. So the other ones that we're going to go through don't quite have as many and aren't quite as cost effective to do testing. So a lot of times you can use your email marketing to test subject and to test copy, the inside of the email, to be able to get into something else like a sales letter or a postcard, which we'll talk about right now. And this is your offline marketing. One of the misconceptions is you really can't track offline marketing, and I want to show you a couple different ways that you can actually do this. So offline marketing, we're talking about postcards, letters, gifts, anything that you're going to send through the mail that's a physical piece, a magazine, even a magazine ad, and that would be considered offline marketing. A couple of things here you want to check. Delivery rate, same idea. Are you getting a lot of returned mail where the address is bad? Maybe you bought a list and 15% of the addresses were returned to you. That's lost money, right? You got to pay for postage, you got to pay for envelopes and paper, or just for the postcard. And if those get returned to you, you got to have a process for that. Are you going to remove those people from your list so you don't email or mail them next time? Are you going to go back to the person that you bought the list through and complain if you're in that 15 to 20%? And get a credit back for those records. Now, open rate, you really can't test that, right? Did they see the postcard? Did they open the letter? You really don't know that on with a postcard and letters. But what you can do is, if they did read it and they take an action, now you know that they did open it, right? So couple of the actions you might have in there, it might be a phone call. You could put a tracking number in there. Tracking numbers, were kind of all the craze on a website. So you knew people came to your website with local directories, and some of Google's changes. A lot of marketers have gone away from using those tracking because they want to have their name, address, and phone number consistent across their website and all the local directories. However, on a piece of mail, you can easily set up a tracking number for a couple dollars a month. And when those phone calls come in on that number, and it could be forwarded to another number, and at the end of the week or end of the month, you go check out that tracking, you can actually um, see how many people took action with that phone call. If you want them to visit a website, we'll go over in this presentation, offline marketing to drive online to online marketing. You might send them to a different subdomain or a directory. For example, if I wanted to send somebody to my website, I can do iMarketingleader.com/special offer or offer 125, right? And when somebody goes out to that page, I can track that, even if it's going to redirect them back to a different page. And that you can track through analytics. How many people visited that subdomain or directory on your website, and then you'll know how many people actually took action on that particular offer. Now, A/B split testing is a little bit more expensive with postcards and letters, right? That's why you need to test a little bit. Don't go buy a list of 1,000 and go mail out 1,000 postcards or 1,000 letters without ever knowing did that actually work. For example, the envelope might cause more people to open it. The letter, what does the heading look like? What does the copy look like? What's the offer inside of it? What's the stamp look like? The postcard, is it colored? Is it two-sided? Is it an oversized postcard? Those are all different pieces that are going to cause people to take action, and you don't want to go into that blindly and then say, "Oh, it didn't work for me. I sent out 500 postcards and I don't even know how many I got back because I wasn't tracking it." That's one of the worst things you could do. Or do you think it's working and you keep spending all that money on those 500 postcards and you're really getting a very low return on that? So let's move on to the next one here where we can talk about tracking your content marketing. Content marketing is very big right now. Google's making a lot of changes to their algorithm to really focus on unique content, punish people who are doing duplicate content, doing spin tags, where that you take that same article and you just spin it over and over and over again and put out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles. By the way, if anybody is selling you on that, don't buy it. It might give you some immediate gratification because you get moved up in the rankings, but Google has been on the warpath for people for that spin tactics, and it's just not worth it. Write high quality content that not only Google's going to like, but your potential clients are going to like. So, segue there, but back to content marketing here with the blog posts and social posts. You can track things like likes, comments, shares, views. Really, what you're looking for is engagement. How many people are engaging in the content that you're sharing? If you're posting constantly out to social media and nobody ever likes and nobody ever comments on it or shares it, depending on which social media platform you're on, you want to make sure that you're providing some value, or you got to get some more connections if you're on LinkedIn, or followers on Twitter, or friends or people that actually like your page on Facebook. You need to maybe get some new ones and that's the same thing. That list needs to keep growing, right? Don't stop when I have 100 or 200 people that like my Facebook page. Keep building that. I mean, you want to be in the thousands, right? Because people aren't going to see all these. I did a presentation on this about the less than 15% of your followers are going to see your information, because we're so consumed by the amount of information that even the social sites are having trouble determining what to show you. But the more people that engage with your content, they like it, they share it, they comment it, the more frequent your posts are going to go up. So in the beginning, if you need to beg, borrow, steal from your friends to like your information, to let the social networks know that your content is good, then you got to do that. And then eventually you'll get the real people that you really want, which is potential customers. Same thing on your blog post. If it's on your own site or on a third party site, if you have comments open, which a lot of people don't because of all the spam, but if you have comments, you can look at that. You can look at if you have the share buttons, share this on Pinterest and LinkedIn and Facebook. You can look at how many of those are. But if you're not really doing any social posting to drive people back to your blog site, you're not going to have a lot of engagement on your blog site. A lot of blogs on your personal site is really for branding and for authority and for ranking purposes. It's not really going to be a lot of engagement. That engagement you're really going to see on the social site. So let's move on here to online to offline marketing. Here are some ideas on how to use a list that you cultivate online and actually how to be able to get one of those 7 to 12 touches using offline marketing. Again, so the 7 to 12 touches, you don't want to say, here's someone that opted in, I'm going to give them 7 emails, right? That may not work. It may work if you're really good at copy and you have a really high engaging potential prospect, but chances are they want to be touched in different ways, right? So with your website, if you had an opt-in page on your website, first of all, let's talk about what a two-stage opt-in is. So if you go out to my site, and I'll flip over it later on, you'll see that, but you want to ask for the least amount of information as possible in the beginning. We talked about this with your irresistible offer. What of value can you give away to get their, minimum name and email, probably email at the very, obviously the very minimum, but try to get at least their first name. So what a two-stage opt-in will actually do is it'll request a first name and email, and then when they submit that, you might be redirected to another page or even in a follow-up email to them asking them for more information. Try to get their address, their phone number, their cell phone number, maybe a little bit of information about them that's relevant to your business. And the beauty part is if they don't answer that second set of questions, you at least have their first name and email address, as opposed to asking them to fill out a whole lot of information in the beginning. And a lot of people look at that and say, wow, that's a little bit too personal, or wow, I'm worried about my security. That's a little bit too much information. I don't even know you. Why are you asking all these questions? And they might just skip it entirely. But if you ask them for their first name and email and what you're offering them is of high enough value, they fill that information out, redirect them to another screen and say, hey, thanks for all that. How about, would you mind filling this information out? And if they fill it out, then they are a very true motivated buyer, right? If they're willing to part ways with their, their not only their email but their addresses and their phone numbers, that is someone that you really need to follow up with, and you should have certain triggers in your system, whether it's a manual system or an automated system, that signal that person is someone that needs to be followed up with. So with that two-stage opt-in, now you have some information on them, and you want to be able to follow up with them offline. What are some of the things that we can do? If we have their address, you can send them postcards, sales letters. We talked about 2 of those already. Postcards, obviously we all know what those are. You would split test different ones. Sales letters are just, a letter, but basically the online equivalent to an offline, right? You might have sent them to a sales page after they opted in. If they didn't take advantage of the offer that you're giving out, maybe in a couple days you kick off a sales letter that looks very similar to your online offer. Lumpy mail or 3D mail are some of the terms for that. That's just a bigger, bulkier package that's going to get somebody to open the mail, right? They're, again, just like online, these, we all get a ton of junk mail. So you're buying for attention there as well. So if you can get them to open it, you've already now increased more likely your conversion rate because now they actually saw that offer. So some examples of lumpy mail are you might send a bank bag, right? That's going to get someone's attention. You might send, I've heard of garbage cans, right? Are you throwing away money, shredded money? Are you wasting money on your current marketing, for example, or don't waste money on those expensive flowers. Come buy them from us. We have discounted flowers or whatever. So, you know, um, And the other thing is you might be able to do is gifts. You might be able to send, if you really want to get in touch with somebody, or somebody, you have a higher price ticket item, you might want to actually send a gift. And there's a lot of them out there that you can actually use. Send out card is one of the big ones where you can send gifts out to people. Send them some brownies or cookies for the office if you're trying to, move them as a client. Back on the lump email, if you were able to back a truck up and pull out a big wooden crate, there's not one person that would not open that. Right now, that's an extreme example. You're not going to do that, but the more unique and the bigger the item, people are going to take notice of it, and they're going to make sure it gets opened. Priority mail envelopes will get more attention than a regular standard envelope. They cost more money, right? You can't do as many. However, if your product or service is of higher value, you can consider that in the lifetime value of your client. So it might make sense, or you can just be a little bit more targeted in your marketing and get a higher open rate and a higher conversion rate, and then you'll be able to convert those people and make more money on that. So let's flip it around and figure out, how do you do offline to online marketing? So you build an address list. There's different ways you can do that. Obviously, we already talked about number one here, which was the website opt-in. If you have, a double opt-in with an address, then you can obviously send them out a mail piece. You can purchase a list. There's a lot of list brokers out there where you can buy email lists. Do your research. Do some reviews out there. See what people like. See if they'll give you an example list where you can test some of the lists, just to make sure that they're, reputable brokers. There's a lot of scraping tools that you can go out there and scrape email addresses from, Google and from, Yelp and from Facebook. So that's, a little bit more advanced on that one there. Between number one and number two, purchasing a list is a relatively painless thing to do, and it's pretty inexpensive. The list is not going to cost you a lot for the person's name and address. It's going to cost you more in the pieces that you're actually going to send out. So when you have that list and you're marketing to them, you want to drive them to a specific landing page, right? So this is, you're sending out a postcard or a letter, and in there you direct them, to a specific landing page, to a specific offer. Most likely, you're not just sending out educational piece of information here, but you're actually wanting to actually promote your business. You might want to call a special number. We talked about this one before. Call a special number, a tracking number for the offer, or just call the same number, but you need to mention this offer code in order to get that. So that's using offline to push them online. And a phone number, a lot of people, that's not really online marketing. However, you're still getting them to take another step, another action. You could also just say, hey, I'm going to send out a postcard. I want people to take this postcard and come into my store, right? Physical into your store. You might have cultivated that information online or through a purchase list, but you're getting them to take a specific action. So let's go over some helpful tips on working with your list. Number one, I've mentioned this, you want to communicate frequently. You don't want to build a list and never email them, or email them once a week, or once a month rather, or twice a year. That list is just too cold. You're not going to get the kind of reaction you want out of it. You need to build that relationship. Number two here is you want to write to an individual, not to a group. Nobody likes to be put into a group. They like personalization, and all the new email tools can do this. Personalization. So when you're writing your email, think of your person, think of your avatar. I talked about this in a lot of trainings. Your avatar, your ideal client, and write like you're talking to that person. And that will come through in your email, and individuals will believe that you're actually writing to just them. It will look a lot more personal rather than some group, spam email. And number three, and probably most important, you want to provide value, and you want to provide exceptional value. And I like to go with the 3-to-1 education to selling, right? You don't always want to just be selling to your list. There's a lot of people out there that are just, well, my list isn't really performing. And I look at their email list, and they have a very low open rate and a very low click-through rate. And it's because all they are is constantly pushing out promotions. We don't like to be sold to. We like to decide to buy. So in order to decide to buy, instead of being sold to, you got to offer something else. And education is a great way to do that, where you can give some education or some helpful tips or something funny, and then a little soft sell at the end, right? Doesn't mean you just have to send out an educational email with no offer or no promotion. But you can say, in the PS, oh, by the way, we have a special going on right now. Your list, as you start building it, will react much better to this form of marketing than the constantly being bombarded by sales. So, what is the secret here? And the secret is automation. And with email autoresponders, you can get this automation. We're all very busy running our businesses. We're doing fulfillment for our clients. We're finding new business. Some of us are our own sales teams and, accountants and everything else, that we don't have time to respond back to every single email. So let me introduce you to autoresponders. So first of all, what are they? An autoresponder is built into email marketing systems that you can set up a sequence of emails that can be kicked off at specific intervals, times, dates, times of day, number of days apart, and it will look, and again, if you're writing to an individual, it'll look very personal to those individuals. So the benefit of this is you can build that sequence out once, obviously once for every single type of autoresponder that you might have, but you build that sequence out once, and then it's on autopilot. Somebody comes and opts in on your website, and they get put into this email sequence, and it might be an email right away, thanking them for being on your list, and oh, by the way, here's the offer that you might have gave them, or here's a download, or here's a free video, or here's access to my book. And then very frequently, most time in the beginning, other emails will be coming out maybe a day later or 2 days later, but you will have already built that sequence. And again, that's A/B split testing. You'll know which ones work over time as you get more people to opt in. But this is like writing a book. You do it once and you can reap the benefits over and over and over again. So no matter if you get one person opt in a month or 100 a day, that email autoresponder is taking and starting to build that relationship for you. Now, you did all the work up front. You wrote that email sequence. You do A/B split tested. You wrote to the individual. You built that relationship, and you're just using automation to help you cultivate that relationship. And the beauty part of autoresponders is you can build different lists for different types of customers or consumers. So you might be one opted in for a special offer. That can go into one email sequence. The other, somebody else might have opted in or might have purchased from you. That might be a completely separate list that you put into someone to purchase. Maybe every month someone that's purchased from you, you send out a special promotion, and they're on that list, and you just go and fill out that promotion, and those email autoresponders will actually go and do that work for you. So very, very powerful tool. A lot of people do not take full advantage of the power of those email autoresponders, and so I want you to really look into that. So here's just a little bit of tips on communicating with your list. First, the big question: how often? And I talk about this a little bit with the autoresponders. You want to definitely communicate more initially. Once a day, maybe even twice that first day, depending on, again, providing value. You don't want to just be, spamming them with a bunch of information. Maybe a couple times in that first week. Again, building that relationship, letting them know that you're happy that they're on your list. Here's an offer, or here's some education, or here are some 5 tips you might not have known, and get them used to opening your emails, right? And then you can taper it off the next week or the week after. My suggestion is minimum twice a month. You got to build that list. Everybody else is trying to bombard them with information. You need to stay in front of them, stay top of mind. So minimum twice a month. I would even say you should try to be able to hit them once a week if you're not hitting them from other avenues, right? If if you're doing some offline marketing, or if they're following you on social media and you're doing a lot of posts and you're keeping in front of them, you know, just be aware of what kind of information you're sending out. And that's the next bullet point here. What do about what are you supposed to be communicating your list with? So here are just a couple of examples. A new blog article. We should be keeping our websites alive, in that we do that by changing out content and writing new content constantly. If you have a new blog article, send it out to your list. If you're writing at least once a month, which is the bare minimum, you can send out to your list and say, hey, I just wrote this new blog article. If you're writing more frequently, if you're doing daily or weekly posting, maybe once a month or twice a month, you send out a synopsis and say, hey, here are the last 5 pieces of content that I wrote. Referrals. You could be asking for referrals. You could be giving some referrals. You could be referring them to other businesses, right? If you have something of value, you should be sharing that. It's not just about selling your own products or services. And we'll get in that on another slide here. Education. Of course, I mentioned, 3-to-1 education. You should be really looking to educate your potential clients or their existing clients or customers on your products and services and why they're a benefit to them. People want to buy on benefit. And then the last one here, and I put this purposely at the bottom, is promotions, because you don't want to be always just selling, right? But you do want to send out promotions. If you have a special offer going on this month, you need to hit your email list up about it. That's a very cheap form of marketing. Or if you're doing offline marketing, you send that same promotion through the mail. All right, so let's talk about unsubscribes here for a minute. I know a lot of people just get really bent out of shape about unsubscribes. They're monitoring, they're tracking, like I suggested to them, and which is awesome. But then they start looking at, oh my gosh, somebody unsubscribed. My response: don't worry about it. You want to monitor it, but don't be too concerned unless that unsubscribe gets too high. And if it's too high, then you need to really look at the value that you've actually built. Or did you buy some cheap spammy list, right? If this is a list that you cultivated, these are potential people that were interested in what you had to offer. So if that unsubscribe is pretty high on an email, maybe you were being a little bit too salesy over time. Maybe you were being a little bit too spammy, right? And the last bullet point is, the reason not to worry about it is non-buyers are going to remove themselves from your list. So they're going to help clean that list. You don't want to be talking to and wasting your time talking to people who are never going to buy from you. Tire kickers, DIYers, if you don't have a DIY product. By people removing themselves, they just did you a favor and said, hey, I'm not interested in your product or service. Don't worry about trying to sell to me anymore. Focus on everybody else. So again, don't be too worried about it, but do monitor it. If it gets too high, you got to look at what you're actually, the kind of value that you're actually providing. So what are some other uses for your lists? And I've kind of alluded to this one, but cross-selling is a huge potential for your list. So you're building a list. An example here on this thing is a HVAC company. So if you got a great website, you're getting a lot of traffic, and you've got a great offer, and you're building a list, and you're an HVAC company. One of the companies that you could cross-sell with is you can find an insulation company, which you probably are already in business with at some point, and you can push to your list their offer. And a couple things to be concerned about here is, that company that you're cross-selling must meet or exceed the standards that you have for your company. Do not sell something that is considered cheaper, or if they don't have the same values that you have in your company, because that's what your list is following you for. That's what your buyers are built. You've built that relationship. Don't break that relationship to make a buck, right? There's a lot of people out there that will say, oh, I'll give you 50% if you sell my, and it's junk stuff. Don't do that. That's on the affiliate offers here, and as an example. If you want to push out something to your list as another potential product, you better make sure that it's a good product. You've used it yourself. Don't do it very often. Cross-selling is something that should be used very sparingly unless it provides a ton of value. Like an HVAC company and an insulation company, they could partner together and really reduce heating and cooling costs, right? Those are two things that can work well together to reduce heating and cooling. And that's what your list is looking for you for. If you're an HVAC company, they're looking for you to take care of them and give them great information. But don't push out the insulation stuff all the time. So let's jump into and look at some different types of email services as we're getting close here to the end. There's basically two different types: email only or a full CRM, which is a customer relationship management system. A couple email onlys, Mailchimp, Constant Contacts, Aweber. Those are some of the cheaper ones in the beginning. Mailchimp even has a free version. But you can't use the autoresponder in the free version. So, when you're just starting to build your list, maybe you're going to do everything manually. You can get started free, right, with MailChimp. As you get a little bit bigger, and everybody should have a complete full database collecting information about your clients, that's when you want to move into more of a full CRM system. A couple of the examples here are Infusionsoft, SendPepper, Office Autopilot. They all have their advantages, disadvantages. Price points are, way different in some of these. Some are more monthly, some are more at the start. So you really need to look at each of these, look at their pricing, look at scalability. Where are they going to be able to go that you're not going to have to, I got to download all my names out of MailChimp because now I want to move to, Office Autopilot. And then you also have to make sure that if you want to get that progression, say from MailChimp to Office Autopilot someday, that you make sure that those other bigger CRMs will allow you to import your list. Again, a lot of these email service providers are very cautious when somebody wants to import a list because they don't know where that list came from. You could have bought that list from, Joe Spam down the street, and now they're going to get whacked for it, right? So that's why you might want to pick one of the ones, some of these have a little bit smaller upfront costs, like SendPepper, for example, is the younger sibling, if you will, of Office Autopilot. They're owned by the same company. So it's a natural progression. It's the same system. They just give you more bells and whistles for Office Autopilot. But you can start out in SendPepper, I think, for like $20 or $30 a month. And then you can progress all the way into Office Autopilot, which is, several $100s a month, right? But you don't have to ever leave that system, that ecosystem. You're getting familiar with it. Where if you start out with Aweber and then want to move to Infusionsoft, those are two completely different platforms. You got to make sure that there's a migration path for you there. So let's get through, and as we wrap this up, some action steps here. I'd like to leave you with some things to get going. We don't want to stay the same. We want to change, right? So we got to take some action to make some change. So first, research and sign up for an email provider if you already don't have one. MailChimp is free. There's no excuses not to at least get into that one. But research it, really do some due diligence. Where do you see your business 6 months, a year from now? And are those tools going to provide that type of quality and have the features that you're going to want? Step 2 here, plan your autoresponder sequences. Do you have different lists, or are you going to have one list? Right? Start planning that out. You got to draw that out on paper, or using a mind map. Really plan that out. An autoresponder just doesn't happen. Okay, today I'm gonna write, oh, I need another email tomorrow, another one. This should be very planned, and should be building that sequence should be building to an action, right? You want them to buy. And do you need different lists? Do you offer multiple products? Should you be putting people all on one list, or should you be segmenting that list? Step 3, create a tracking plan and get it set up. Again, this could be as simple as a Excel spreadsheet. Put some columns on there, put some tracking information on there, have the person answering the phone have access to that, have your webmaster be able to give you information, you can fill that out. And on a monthly basis, you should be, at a minimum on a monthly basis, you should be looking at that tracking information and really planning it and figuring out what's working and what's not working. Step 4 here, implement that opt-in on your website. you know, all of those different service providers will give you forms that you can put on your website and start gathering information. Go back to the training that I did on your irresistible offer and figure out what you can offer in order to get people's first name and email address. And the last one here is plan and implement some offline marketing. Again, 7 to 12 touches. You can't really just touch them all with email, right? They might not respond to 12 emails in a row. Right? You might need to use something like send out cards to send postcards or nice cards. You can print your own letters or postcards. Office Autopilot is a system that I use. You can actually send individual cards as part of this autoresponder sequence, which is actually a nice feature where you can say, here's 2 emails, and then a postcard gets sent out, and then another email and another postcard. So some of these have a lot of automation built into them. Infusionsoft and Office Autopilot are 2 of the biggest ones, and they have a lot of automation in there. So really take a look at those. So that's really all I have here. If you do have any questions or if you'd like us to help, here's our information right here, leader at iMarketingleader.com, and you can reach us at 979-314-7213. I thank everybody for being on the call today and listening to the training. If you're listening to recording, sign up, get on the live call. We can have some interaction, and you can start implementing these things right away. So again, this is Todd McPartlin with iMarketing Leader, and get out there, start building your list, and start marketing to that list. Thank you.